we require that all of us live by the law that we have decided we are going to live by. It's as simple as that. We don't think the gentleman is a problem. In fact, we fear that he may be a big problem to himself more than to anyone else in this world. So we will do whatever it takes to support him, however he will be needed, so that he is less of a problem to himself, because that, I think, is the worry that any government would have, as it were. Secondly, there is an issue I would like to speak to very passionately from my heart, and this is the issue of inter-branch relations between the judiciary, the executive, parliament, and so on. Honorable members, many of those democracies we admire are 100, 200 years old, and if you spoke to those who have studied them, they will tell you nation building is a painstaking and long journey. We've started. I want to confirm to you here again on record, as government, we respect the judiciary. We will obey all court orders without exception, all of them, and we will do as we are directed by the courts. All we are asking is that let us not pay so much attention to the check side. Let us also pay attention to the balances side, because it's supposed to be of checks and balances, so that we don't overreach. Judicial overreach can be as harmful as executive branch overreach or as legislative overreach, as it were. So that if we go beyond, because for example, if you are able to give ex parte orders on firearms, for example, and the Firearms and Licensing Board has got the professionals who can analyze and say, Honorable Ngunjiri has posed particular challenges, let us suspend his firearm license. But then you overrule that, and you don't have tools to review his situation. The person who has the tools to review the situation is the Firearms and Licensing Board. Then you are going a little bit beyond, where you're supposed to be. It's good enough for you to say, after I've reviewed Honorable Ngujiri's application, I think he was not treated fairly. Then ask us to treat him differently. But you see, when you make, a complete determination and you throw us off balance, there is a little bit of going beyond, where we are supposed to be. And that overreach hurts balance. But I can assure you, we respect the judiciary. We will continue to work with the judiciary. We also worry as much as you do, because when a judge makes an order stopping us from collecting tax, then the Judicial Service Commission will go to the Treasury for money. So, surely, do you see the relationship? I mean, where are we? Because that tax is how we will get money that the Treasury will give you to manage the Judicial Service Commission. We all need to have this, patient engagement with each other. My suggestion, and we have thought about this with colleagues in the ministry, is constant engagement and constant discussions with the leaders of the judiciary and constant interactions and a very positive attitude. Honorable members, this problem, 50% of it will be solved by attitude. A positive attitude. Having a positive attitude that says, these are my brothers. They may have a point. Let me listen to them. An attitude only can solve most of this issue. So even you, as our honorable members of parliament and leaders in the legislative arm of government, maybe through your committees, you will begin a new system where you have more interaction with the judiciary, more engagement, so that we can understand each other, reduce the friction, so that we can move the country forward. And when they have made decisions, I can assure you we will respect the decision, except that we also need now to intensify our engagement. But there is no problem. I can tell you this, I don't think there's a problem in the nature in which people think between the executive branch and the judiciary. There could be a few judicial officers, as I said, and they probably will not number more than 5. There are few judicial officers and so on. And as I said earlier, the law requires us that we go through our bridge. Our bridge is the Attorney General. Even the challenges we have right now on this particular matter, we have presented a petition to the Attorney General. The Attorney General will take it to the Judicial Service Commission on those judicial officers, and the Judicial Service Commission will decide and guide us how we will go. The ones we have with the Law Society of Kenya, we have again presented to the Attorney General. The Attorney General will write to the Law Society of Kenya. I think that is the orderly way in which we can operate. We can't go out there shouting at them and so on and so forth. We will try to be as orderly as we can. What we are bleeding for as we go along is that a measure of responsibility on each of us, and we'll have to continue engaging. Lastly, but not the least, on the issue of the Canadian High Commission. I feel constrained to say this because it would be unfair if I left this without saying it. We enjoy a very strong relationship with the Canadian government and the people and the nation. We have a very strong relationship. I am aware, and honorable members, we will tell you in more details, for example, the Canadian government support to the efforts of UNHCR and the activities that we are doing in terms of dealing with refugees and so on. We have huge development programs with the Canadian government. We enjoy a fantastic relationship. Our colleagues in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have done very well. And if you look at this issue, by the way, at every turn and bend, they have been 100% responsive. When we called them on the matter, they were able to extend consular services to Miguna. And they have remained in communication with us as we go along. I wouldn't actually get to a point of requiring them to explain. I would manage relations differently by working with them, because they themselves are also suffering as much as we are suffering on this issue. Because when you have your 3 consular officials at the airport begging this guy and telling him, hey, so what less have they done than we did? I mean, we've worked very well and they've been very helpful and cooperative, and we'll continue to work with them. The Canadian High Commissioner has been fantastic in working with my colleagues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we'll leave it at that. I would not make any demands on them more than what has already happened, as it were. We'll continue working together, and there are so many of our people who are in Canada right now. Some have applied to regularize their citizenship, and we will continue working with them on the scholarship program, on education, and all those issues that we work with the Canadian government. Lastly, I want to urge you as a committee, because you are our front desk to Parliament, because it's through you that we come to Parliament, and it's through you, therefore, we engage with others. I would like to ask you that both now and as we continue in the future, we'll continue discussing some of the things we need to do to support the security sector. Our Inspector General and his team do a fantastic job. That does not mean that they will not have challenges or issues. When they do, we find a way of resolving them for the good of our country as we go forward. So I wouldn't blame police officers and say they have done this or they have done that. Movement of police officers is a routine thing, and it happens all the time. I don't think the movement of Mr. Ndolo from the port had anything to do with what happened last week. The Inspector General, from January, you have observed yourselves, from January, he has been actually